Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a look at a custom-tailored set of notes focused on a really highly specific cultural flashpoint.
Curated just for you.
Exactly. Curated just for you, the listener. The source material today is a document titled Dubstep Story EZO 2 Golden Age.
Right. Provided by 786 Music, LLC.
Yeah, and copyrighted 2026. Now, this isn't, a sprawling textbook.
Quote from it.
It's actually a razor-sharp, heavily distilled set of coordinates. It maps out the exact anatomy of the UK's most exciting underground scene during a very specific 4-year window.
That being 2006 to 2010.
Right. And our mission today is to decode these notes. We want to understand the mechanics of this undisputed golden age. Like, how does a movement capture lightning in a bottle?
Sustain that energy.
Yeah, and then fundamentally mutate its own DNA to achieve lasting impact.
The brevity of these notes, it's actually their most defining feature.
How so?
Well, when analyzing cultural history, an exhaustively detailed account can sometimes bury the actual structural pillars of a movement.
Under a mountain of trivia.
Exactly. But this document strips away the noise entirely. By explicitly framing 2006 to 2010 as a golden age for the UK underground, the author is making a highly deliberate, critical argument.
They're isolating the core.
Right. We are looking at a period where the feedback loop between the creators and the audience operated at maximum efficiency. The notes isolate the absolute critical load-bearing elements of that era.
Like the physical infrastructure.
Yes, the live events, the defining communal anthem, and then the eventual pivot into this deeply introspective emotional territory.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the timeline itself.
The 4-year window.
Right. The notes definitively box this golden age into just 4 years, from 2006 to 2010. And in the context of the UK underground, maintaining the title of the most exciting scene for a solid 48 months.
It's a massive structural achievement.
It's huge, because underground music is notoriously volatile.
Very volatile.
Scenes typically fracture, or they commercialize, or they just exhaust their own creative formulas well before a 4-year mark.
Yeah, to sustain that level of undisputed peak excitement, it implies an ecosystem that was constantly regenerating itself.
Avoiding the trap of stagnation.
Exactly, while resisting the pressure to dilute its core sound for a wider, safer audience.
You really have to think about the sheer velocity of cultural iteration required to keep a scene at the absolute vanguard for that long.
An underground movement doesn't maintain its most exciting status by simply repeating the same trick every weekend.
You're right.
The 2006 to 2010 window suggests a period of hyper-evolution. The producers and the audience were locked in a highly pressurized environment.
Where the sonic vocabulary was expanding week by week.
Because the baseline expectation of the listener was constantly moving forward, which meant the producers had to continually push the boundaries of the genre's low-end frequencies.
Or rhythmic structures.
Yes, and its atmospheric tension just to keep up with the demand of the dance floor.
And that demand, it leads directly into the first major structural pillar identified in our source, the legendary DMZ nights. The document places massive weight on these specific live events. In the architecture of an underground scene, a recurring club night acts as the physical laboratory.
You can't just have producers making tracks in a vacuum.
No, you need a dedicated acoustic space where those experiments are tested in real time.
The proving ground.
Right. And the term legendary attached to DMZ indicates that these nights weren't just standard parties. They were the localized epicenter of the culture.
The essential space where the community gathered to physically interact with the sound and with each other.
The physical reality of those DMZ nights is so central to understanding the genre's power. We're talking about music fundamentally engineered around sub-bass frequencies.
Right, and that type of sound requires a massive specialized sound system to be properly articulated.
You literally cannot experience the true weight of that music through standard consumer speakers.
No, you'd miss the whole point.
Exactly. So the DMZ nights served a necessary acoustic function. They provided the sheer physical force required to transmit the music into the bodies of the audience.
The space itself becomes an instrument.
That's a great way to put it. The heavy, pressurized atmosphere of a dark room vibrating with low-end frequency, it creates a highly specific, unified physical state among the crowd. Everyone is subjugated to the exact same acoustic pressure simultaneously.
And that synchronized physical state is the ultimate goal of any communal underground experience. The notes perfectly illustrate this by anchoring the DMZ nights to a specific piece of music.
Skream's Midnight Request line.
Yes. The source sets this track up as the definitive anthem of that physical space.
And an anthem in this context isn't just a popular song.
No, it's a highly functional piece of audio engineering. It's designed to maximize the potential of that shared environment.
When a track like that drops in a space like DMZ, it acts as a unifying mechanism.
It aligns the entire room.
Right, turning a chaotic crowd of individuals into a single cohesive entity reacting to the same rhythmic pivot.
What's fascinating here is the precise relationship between the track and the physical environment. Midnight Request Line functioned as the architectural blueprint for the scene's high-energy communal phase.
This is the pinnacle of that phase.
Right. To achieve anthem status in a highly critical underground environment, a track must perfectly balance raw physical impact with instantly recognizable sonic markers.
It needs to command the sound system.
Exactly. Utilizing those sub-bass frequencies to physically move the crowd while also establishing a memorable melodic or rhythmic hook that serves as a focal point for the collective energy.
So the pairing of DMZ and Skream in the notes demonstrates that this golden age was initially built on an extroverted, highly kinetic foundation.
It was entirely about shared external projection.
Right. It is the absolute apex of the communal club experience. The music is loud, the environment is intensely physical, and the culture is hyper-focused on that shared external projection.
You have a scene operating at peak performance within the boundaries of the club space.
The energy is explosive, and it's entirely reliant on the presence of the crowd and the sheer volume of the sound system. The rules of engagement are clear.
The music is designed to be experienced collectively.
At night.
In a highly pressurized acoustic environment. That is the established status quo of the UK's most exciting underground scene at the start of this timeline.
And that status quo creates a fascinating baseline for what comes next.
Because a genre entirely reliant on the physical space of the club is inherently limited by the boundaries of that space.
Right.
The communal energy, no matter how legendary, is transient. It exists for a few hours in the dark and then dissipates when the sound system is turned off.
So if the culture had remained strictly confined to the parameters of the DMZ nights and the high-energy club anthems,
it likely would have burned out or become one-dimensional long before the end of the 2006 to 2010 window.
The survival and elevation of the scene required a structural mutation.
It needed to prove that its sonic vocabulary was robust enough to exist outside the club.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source material introduces a massive sudden pivot. Directly after establishing the raw communal dominance of DMZ and Skream, the notes shift entirely.
To burial in the album Untrue.
Exactly. And the document uses a highly specific phrase to categorize this shift.
Emotional dubstep.
Emotional dubstep. That phrasing signals a complete subversion of the established aesthetic.
It's a huge shift. We are moving from a genre defined by heavy, physical, collective energy into a space defined by profound introversion.
The exact same baseline ingredients of the UK underground are suddenly being used to construct an entirely different psychological environment.
The introduction of Burial's Untrue as emotional dubstep represents the critical maturation point of the 2006 to 2010 Golden Age. Let us analyze the contrast in how this music is consumed.
Because it's night and day.
Right. The club anthem is designed for a shared acoustic space. An album categorized as emotional,
particularly in the context of electronic music,
is almost exclusively designed for solitary private listening.
Yeah.
The headphone music.
Headphone music. The acoustic pressure is no longer hitting your chest in a crowded room. It is localized directly into your ears while you are alone.
The spatial mechanics of the listening experience are completely inverted. The genre took the dark, heavy atmosphere of the physical underground and internalized it.
And that internalization completely changes the function of the music.
Completely.
When you remove the sheer volume of the club sound system and the physical presence of the crowd, the music has to rely on entirely different mechanisms to hold the listener's attention.
The heavy bass and the syncopated rhythms are still there.
Yeah, but they aren't being used as a blunt instrument to move bodies on a dance floor anymore. They are being used to create a detailed, immersive narrative space.
The phrase emotional dubstep indicates that the producers learned how to encode complex psychological weight into the same frequencies that used to just vibrate the walls of the club.
Think about what a leap that is. The transition from the physical to the psychological is what solidifies the era as a true golden age.
The scene expanded its bandwidth. It proved it could cater to the absolute extremes of the human experience.
On one hand, you have the raw communal excitement of the DMZ nights. That satisfies the fundamental human need for collective gathering.
Physical release.
Shared identity.
And then on the other hand, Burial's Untrue satisfies the equally important need for solitary reflection.
Emotional processing.
Private introspection. The notes are showing us a holistic cultural ecosystem here.
The scene provided the soundtrack for the chaotic peak of the night. And crucially, it evolved to provide the soundtrack for the solitary, quiet aftermath.
It is a remarkable expansion of a genre's utility. Think about the acoustic environment of Untrue versus a live club night.
Right. In a club, the nuance is often swallowed by the sheer volume and the acoustics of the room. It is a macro experience.
When you transition to emotional, solitary listening,
The experience becomes micro.
yes, the listener's ear becomes attuned to the negative space in the music. The subtle textures, the crackle, the atmospheric tension that would be entirely lost on a dance floor.
The source is highlighting a moment where the UK underground slowed down, zoomed in, and allowed the intricate details of its own sound to take center stage.
And this attention to detail and texture is the hallmark of a genre that has mastered its own tools. In the early stages of any musical movement, the focus is on establishing the foundational rules,
The tempo, the drum patterns.
the basic frequency range. Skream's Midnight Request line is a masterful execution of those foundational rules.
The blueprint.
But emotional dubstep represents the phase where artists begin to deliberately manipulate and degrade those rules to evoke specific feelings.
They use the established language of the underground to write poetry instead of just shouting commands.
That's spot on. The heavy, oppressive weight of the bass is repurposed to represent melancholy, isolation, or longing.
And that repurposing is really the crucial takeaway from this deep dive. The 2006 to 2010 golden age of the UK underground wasn't just about one specific sound dominating for 4 years.
It was about a complete trajectory.
The source notes draw a straight line from the aggressively physical, extroverted environment of the DMZ nights straight into the deeply personal, introverted landscape of Burial's Untrue.
It is a story of a culture that built a massive, impenetrable fortress of sound in the club.
And then systematically dismantled that fortress to figure out how to make those same heavy frequencies resonate on a deeply intimate, emotional level.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this concise set of notes from 786 music serves as a blueprint for understanding cultural longevity.
Because a movement cannot survive if it only offers one mode of engagement.
Exactly. If the UK underground had remained entirely focused on the live, communal energy of the club space, it would have eventually exhausted its audience and its creators.
They would have just burned out.
And conversely, if it had started entirely in the introspective, emotional space, it never would have generated the initial physical momentum and the critical mass necessary to become the most exciting scene.
The Golden Age exists precisely because the scene managed to hold both of those extreme polarities in perfect tension.
The tension is everything.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, navigating your own creative or professional landscapes?
Because it is highly applicable.
Extremely. The mechanics of this 2006 to 2010 UK underground scene offer a highly applicable framework for reaching peak performance in any collective endeavor.
Achieving your own golden age.
Right. Whether you are designing a product, building a community, or leading a team, it requires mastering two completely different environments. You need the capacity to generate raw, unifying energy.
You need those loud communal moments that align everyone.
And create a shared sense of undeniable momentum. You need your version of the DMZ night and the high energy anthem.
But the communal momentum is only half the equation.
Right.
The other half is depth. You must also develop the capacity to resonate when the volume is turned down and the individual is left alone with the work.
The product, the art, or the culture you are building must possess the nuance and the emotional intelligence to sustain solitary scrutiny.
It has to offer value in the quiet moments.
The true masterstroke of the era described in our source material was the ability to take the aggressive, demanding energy of the underground and refine it into an experience that spoke directly to the isolated individual.
Balancing the macro and the micro.
The loud, shared physical reality and the quiet, solitary psychological space.
That is the exact formula for a 4-year run of undisputed cultural dominance.
The notes we analyzed today are brief, but they map out the complete life cycle of an artistic peak. The UK underground scene proved its power by dominating the physical space of the dance floor.
And then it proved its permanence by evolving to conquer the internal emotional space of the listener.
It is a massive achievement, distilled into a handful of perfectly chosen coordinates.
As we conclude our analysis of this remarkable cultural window, this raises an important question about the life cycle of artistic movements. I want to leave you with a final thought to analyze on your own.
I love this part.
If a genre's golden age is initially forged in the highly energetic, tightly packed, communal pressure cooker of the live underground club, but its ultimate artistic validation comes in the form of a deeply introspective, emotional masterpiece designed exclusively for solitary headphone listening.
Yeah.
Is that the golden age end precisely because the art has fundamentally outgrown the very acoustic and social environment that birthed it?
Wow. That is a phenomenal question to carry forward. When the music mutates to the point where it no longer needs the club to survive, what happens to the scene?
It's something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of a golden age. We hope you take these insights into the balance of communal energy and solitary depth and apply them to your own worlds. Keep analyzing the structures around you, keep looking for the nuance in the noise, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.